Okay, I'm going to go very quickly through this and hopefully stimulate questions and that you can follow up. This is a joint study. Wei Zhang, my colleague, is the lead on it, but we have a lot of our national partners also, and Marco Janssen from Arizona State. This is part of a larger project that I think I've talked about before, where we're trying to use natural resource management games not just as an extractive research tool, but actually to facilitate social learning and to stimulate collective action around natural resource management. So we're looking at collective action for commons. We've done work on groundwater. Thomas Falk is doing surface water work, and then this, I'm going to be talking about the forestry work. The reason for this is that for any of these common pool resources to be sustainably managed, you usually need some form of coordination. Usually also grounded in local collective action, voluntary collective action, and that often doesn't emerge, so, or it may not always be sustained. So we're looking at whether some of these experimental games can be a way of strengthening collective action. I know a lot of people deal with these experimental games, and one of the things I want to plant in your minds is to ask for your own games, what kind of footprint do the games leave behind? Because one thing we find is that a lot of times the games really create a salience that just a survey may not create, and that can be good or bad. In this particular paper, I'm focusing on analyzing whether local beliefs and norms about shared resources and the gender of participation, of participants and the payment methods affect the tree harvesting behavior. We've got 3 different treatments in the game. Each set of players go through all 3 treatments. The first set is non-communication. Then they're allowed communication, but it's cheap talk, you know, nothing more than just communication. And then a third set where they can choose monitoring and sanctioning rules, because a lot of research shows that monitoring and sanctioning really does improve the outcome. So these have some methodological implications, but also very practical. We're rolling now out these games, we hope, in surface water or water games in 1,500 communities in India next year, starting next year. These particular games on forestry were played in Andhra Pradesh and Rajasthan. 60 habitations, that's sort of a social village, randomly selected from ones where these Foundation for Ecological Security, our partner, has been operating. We play we have 2 different groups in each habitation, one for women and one for men, because mixing them, usually women won't be as active as if they are in a separate group. So we have a total of 120 groups, 5 players per group. It's a community forestry game, and then we also do a community debriefing, which is an important part of this. And then we do some simple mental model surveys, and a lot of good qualitative work accompanied this. We had 2 different types of boards. The white one, the plain one, was based off of the standard forestry game that Marco Janssen had developed. Wei Zhang thought that perhaps putting on some colors and talking about it as ecosystem services might improve the outcomes, so we randomly allocated that. In the community debriefing, we invited everybody from the community, described the game, and then had the people who had played it talk about its relevance to what they had what they had experienced relative to what was going on in the community, and how that might affect ideas for going forward. The game starts out with a quote-unquote degraded forest with 50 out of 100 possible trees, and people can either choose to harvest. If they choose the maximum harvest, the system is going to crash in three rounds. Or they can, if they actually choose the low harvesting, it can actually improve its outcomes. And you can increase the forest cover. I've got there are 5 hypotheses. I am not going to be able to cover them. The one I am going to not even mention really is that local context and participant characteristics help explain the behavior in the experiment. I'm just going to say that yes, they really, really do, and it means that you need to pay attention to how the game is framed. So, first of all, the idea that without communication, participants will overharvest and exhaust the resource as rapidly as possible. You get a Nash equilibrium. Actually, no. You can see that even in the set 1, which is no communication, none of the groups actually crash the resource as rapidly as the Nash equilibrium would. That communication and internally driven monitoring and sanctioning leads to less overharvesting. Yes, that's confirmed. And if you see here on the not sure how to do it, but this is no communication, this is with communication, and this is with the optional rule choice. So that helps in each case, and it also shows up in the regression results. Individual payments based on how they played in the game lead to more harvesting than sort of a community flat rate payment. I should have mentioned that we also randomly allocated whether people were actually paid in cash based on the outcome of their individual choices, or whether there was just a flat contribution to the community so that individuals didn't see any difference in what they took home. Individuals didn't take home anything except the experience. And we found, in the past, we found that the payment, one of my studies found out that the payment didn't matter. Thomas had found some surprising results on payment. Here we get quite a surprising result that actually paying individuals based on how they played led to less overharvesting for men in both states and for women in Andhra Pradesh. For women in Rajasthan, paying them individually led them to harvest more than women from other communities which were not paid individually. We're still puzzling that over. But so that blue result on is the sort of anomaly there. Frankly, I think the 3 results where the individual payment caused less harvesting is surprising. As I said, the local context matters was confirmed. That men and women behave differently in the experiment is confirmed, but for the ecofeminists out there, this is going to be kind of surprising that overall women harvested more trees in the experiment than men did in both states. The crowding in effect of that individual payment seems to be larger for men than for women. In Andhra, it should be AP. In both states, the harvesting behavior of men tended to respond better to the communication than for women. That may well be because men are more used to participating in discussions about setting the rules. And the optional rule selection also had a similar effect on women and men in both states, but it seemed to be larger for men than women in Rajasthan. So, in terms of, we do think that the policies should take account of local beliefs. Communities really did appreciate the opportunity to discuss the resource degradation issues, and the games gave them a chance to try out different options. So we think that this is very important, but as with many things, gender does matter. So thanks.